Senator. How are you?
Doing well. Looking forward to this discussion, reference the mail-in voting and all that.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you coming on board and being willing to answer questions for these folks.
Sure, absolutely.
If you're ready to get started, we can go.
Sure, sir, absolutely.
All right, according to what I have here, if a person submits a completed mail-in ballot and then decides to go to the poll, what happens?
Okay, when they arrive at the polling place, the poll workers, the election officers in the poll book will have information regarding their status. So if they have requested a ballot and it is not returned, that'll be noted. And if that is the case, then the voter is permitted to vote at the polling place. And what we do then is once the voter checks in at the poll book, that will update their status, so that if by any chance the ballot were to be returned later, the mail ballot, that would already indicate the voter had voted and that ballot would be voided. So
okay, so is that by some barcode or something, or how is that noted?
Well, when the voter checks in at the polling place, when they either provide an ID that's scanned or the poll worker looks them up manually, that will update their record. Then later, just to say theoretically, maybe someone forgot and they did mail their ballot in and maybe it slipped their mind, let's just say. When that ballot were to arrive at the election office, there is a barcode on that. And when that would be scanned in, or someone would attempt to scan it in at the office, that would be an indication the voter had already voted at the polling place. So that ballot would be voided. And we would still retain it, but it would be noted as voided.
So if they show up at the polling place, then their mail-in ballot is nullified?
That's right, exactly. It is whatever would be the first. So just like the opposite situation, if, for example, someone did request a ballot by mail and they returned it, but let's just say, for example, they were concerned perhaps that it didn't reach us in time in the mail and they went to the polling place. In a similar fashion, as I mentioned with the poll book, indicating a ballot was sent and not returned, it would also indicate as well if a ballot was returned. And if that was the case, the poll worker would see that message and then would tell the voter, your mail-in ballot's already been received, therefore you won't be able to vote today. It maintains that single vote in the system.
So the first one takes precedent?
Always the first one, whichever one comes in first. That's right.
That sounds good. That's pretty clear.
Yes.
When you change party affiliation, how long does it take for that to show up?
Well, it depends on when you're changing the party. Because of in our code, we have those closed periods, as they're called, when party changes are not allowed. And that really only comes into play for the primary election. Just to give you an example, for this year's primary election, which was September 15th, per code, the closed period begins the last Saturday in May. So this year that was May 29th. So just going back to the state primary, if someone submitted a party change after that period, during the closed period, we could not process that until after the primary. So those are being processed now, or really all pretty much have been processed now. We are not currently in a closed period for party changes. We're open again until the next closed period, really for the next election cycle. So voters are free to change their party now if they wish, and they'll see that change pretty much immediately.
Right, and/or register. They could register now.
Right. The registration deadline for the general election is October 10th, so a week from this Saturday. So we will be running. We actually just got them started this week. Advertisements, for example, in the newspapers. We'll also have info on our website, and our offices will have hours that they'll be open on the 10th. And then there's always iVote, the voter portal, ivote.de.gov, where folks can register, or they can always download a form from our website and mail it in. But October 10th is the deadline. So We want folks to know that if you're not registered, for those currently registered, certainly no need to do anything in that regard. The only thing we ask is for everyone, if you're currently registered, just check your registration. Make sure, for example, your address is updated, all that information is accurate so that you don't have any inconvenience on election day when you're going to the polls or when you're requesting your mail-in ballot.
All right. How's the identity of an individual verified for a mail-in ballot whenever they request one?
Right. We have our staff checks each of those applications individually. So we review the information, ensure that all the information is consistent with what's on file. And certainly if there are updates that are needed, that's also reviewed. And anything that is needed is referred to one of our experienced supervisors or directors in the county for verification if there's any questions. But each one of those is reviewed by an individual. It's not an automated process. We want everyone to know that. Each application is reviewed, information is confirmed before it is completed.
So there's an application for the ballot and then the ballot.
That's correct. Yeah, our process is always by request. With the current vote by mail legislation that's in place now, just like with absentee, always by request. There's no ballots that would be automatically sent to voters. There are voters that have the option, and even before the vote by mail legislation, they've signed up to be permanent absentee voters,
right,
so they can receive ballots, of course, for any election that they qualify for. But even in that case, the voter would had to have signed up previously and indicated their request, either to do so, their desire to do so.
So everyone got an application, is that right?
Right. We sent applications out per the recent legislation prior to the state primary and the general election. Those were sent to all those eligible to vote in those elections. We did not send applications to those who had already requested absentee ballots or vote by mail, including those permanent ones, just so it wouldn't be a duplicate. We didn't want to confuse folks, those who'd already signed up. But everyone who hadn't, as of the date we prepared that mailing, did receive that, and we indicated that in the letter. But to give you an example, for the mailing that just went out for the general election, the date, and of course we have to prepare several weeks in advance, of course, for the large mailing. So this that list was pulled, for example, for that mailing on August 25th. So anyone as of August 25th who had not already requested an absentee or vote by mail ballot did receive an application. And also, just if I could say real quick, in that application, in the letter that accompanied it, we also indicated that the individuals are welcome to go to the iVote site, the iVote portal, because they could always request the ballot there if they prefer not to complete a paper form.
Right. We're hearing a lot of complaints that, hey, I got five ballots at my home. They didn't get ballots, they got applications.
That's correct. Right? That's correct. No ballots at all would be sent out except by a request. And on that question, if I could mention, we ask everyone, we have various methods that we use to, and this is continuously, not just currently with this legislation, to update the voter registration information. However, we realize that there certainly are individuals who, for example, may be listed who no longer live at an address. What we do ask, and we do have instructions in the mailing, if anyone did receive something for an individual no longer residing at their residence, please mark that return to sender and place back in the mail or give to your mail carrier. We really need that mailing to begin the address verification process, because there are federal laws that govern how we can update the list, and we really need to have that returned mail to begin that process. So that's very, very helpful for us. It's really essential for us.
So you don't want them simply throwing them away.
Please don't do that. We ask just simply mark return to sender, drop back in the mail, give to your mail carrier. That will be very helpful to us to get that back to us. And we do send that type of mailing, return service requested, noted on there. But again, if an individual can just simply mark return to sender and drop it back in the mail, that would be very helpful to us.
All right. Another question on how many, can you turn in your friend or family ballots? You go to
Oh, yes, there is no restriction in our law regarding ballot drop off, for example. So there is no restriction on that. So you could do that. For example, you use the family situation. If you have your spouse and your children, and you vote them, you could drop them off at the office or in one of the secure drop boxes.
Well, let's play devil's advocate here.
Mm-hmm.
We get 4 or 5 applications at a house and only one person out of them lives there. Could they still send those applications in and request a ballot?
We would again verify that information, and we have various checks to look into that. We would hope, of course, obviously we hope people are very honest. We understand that, but that's one of the reasons we have those checks in place. Certainly if there are individuals who do not no longer live at the residence, we would, as I mentioned, perform that check for everyone and do our best to be due diligence on that. But again, we really encourage everyone,
Okay.
again, to definitely return any of those items for anyone who's not at the residence. And again, we want everyone to know too that the list maintenance, as we call it, list maintenance, address verification is definitely an ongoing process. I wish, to be honest with you, I wish in a perfect world that the process was fully automated between all of the jurisdictions in the country, all of the elections jurisdictions, for example. One of the things, just so everyone knows, one of the tools that we use, I'll just mention real quickly, in addition to the returned mail process that I'm mentioning. Delaware is a member. We were actually a founding member of a consortium called ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center. It currently includes 30 states, and there are a few states that are in the process of hopefully joining after this election cycle. What that organization does, it actually is a consortium where we have a compact or an agreement to share only for elections purposes registration information and motor vehicle agency information in those member states. Motor vehicle agency because that's where most individuals register to vote, and it's required by federal law that registration services are offered at motor vehicle agencies. With that information, that kind of helps us significantly in the list maintenance process, because we can receive through that consortium from other member states indications that a voter has moved out of the state, and that expedites the process of verifying that and confirming that. So we just wanted to mention that to let folks know there are other tools in addition to the returned mail piece, but that return mail again is really essential because it's required by federal law that we have to have documentation through returned mail before we can initiate that process to remove someone from the rolls.
When are the ballots counted? Are they
Sure.
on the day of the election, or are they counted as they come in?
Right, that's a good question. The way that works, and with this current legislation, thankfully we have the time. We have a 30-day window to prepare the ballots, and when we say prepare the ballots, what that means essentially is once the ballots are checked in and they are logged in and verified as returned. They can be opened. They are immediately separated from the ballot envelope to ensure anonymity of the voters' choices. That's always been the case, even with absentee for many years. And then they can be, for example, prepared and scanned in the absentee scanners that tabulate them. However, we never tabulate the results until close of polls on election night. So no one has any indication of any results or anything until then. But the scanning window allows us to get those results in. Thankfully, for example, in the primary election, we were able to report all the unofficial results on election night, despite the high volume. But again, no totals are ever tabulated before close of polls.
But they're counted. You don't give the totals.
Right. We don't ever hit the total button. We don't even know the totals.
Right.
There's a process to do that with several levels of security, and we only initiate that after polls close.
Right. That makes sense. I was just concerned with where you were headed there.
Sure.
I'm just looking over some of the questions here.
Sure.
One of the questions is they submitted an application, but they have not received the general election ballot yet. When will they come out?
Sure. If someone had requested under the provisions of absentee, let's say they requested an absentee ballot, those will begin coming out this week. For vote by mail, the provisions in the law are that we can send those 30 days prior. So they will begin going out next week. So the first week of October,
Okay.
once we get in that 30-day window.
All right. Well, that answers a lot of questions because a lot of folks that they requested it now.
Absolutely.
Out there. Going through some of the other questions here.
Mm-hmm. Just real quick, if I could add, I should have added on that note. We do have on the iVote, the voter portal, ivote.de.gov. There is one of the tools on there is an indicator as to when a ballot, you can track your ballot, when it was sent, when it was returned. So we definitely encourage voters to check that out. And as soon as an update is made in terms of the process, that will be reflected in iVote as well.
Why do people continue to get applications? They've gotten one, they get another and another. One gentleman told me he'd gotten 4 applications. He hadn't turned in any, and he was concerned with why he continued to get them.
Sure. Well, basically, going back to the presidential I'll just circle back even to that far. That was under the executive order, but this for the primary and the general election under the legislation. The requirements in the legislation were that we were to mail to all those folks who were eligible. So if you had not returned one application, then another was sent to you. Basically, if you had already requested a ballot and had opted in, basically no application was sent. But we were required to send one to all eligible folks for each election. So that's why individuals would have received multiple, one for each.
All right. Who's overseeing the mail-in ballots as they are being counted to ensure the honesty of the count?
Mm-hmm. Sure. In each office, and that's handled by each county office, and that's the county director and deputy director, and those are bipartisan positions. One is a Democrat, one's Republican. And also the teams that are reviewing the ballots, that are preparing them, those are also bipartisan teams as well. So it's handled in really a nonpartisan manner, but not bipartisan in terms of the makeup of the teams. And it's always under the supervision of one of the directors in the office. So, and there's always multiple individuals present. There's never anything handled individually. So there's levels of controls, and certainly there's levels, like I say, of bipartisanship or nonpartisanship in the whole process. I can definitely assure you that.
Jumping off of mail-ins for a moment. If there's a line at the polls come 8 o'clock, do they still get to vote or not?
Oh, yes, absolutely. By our law, anyone who is in line by 8 o'clock is permitted to vote. And practically what happens in that case, if there is a line, the election officers, the poll workers are instructed to place a poll worker at the end of the line after the last person who was in line at 8 o'clock. And then any individual in line by 8 o'clock is definitely permitted to vote.
All right. Another question just came in. When's the cutoff for mail-in ballots? I believe that's what the question means.
Okay, sure. We are permitted to mail out the ballots through Friday preceding the election. So that's October 30th. Now, that is the last day that we can legally mail them. We do say that in terms of just a best practice, getting your application in certainly by a week prior is probably a good best practice. Although we can mail up to the Friday preceding, and we're fortunate that generally our mail service levels or service timeframes are good here locally. Sending an application Friday would be cutting it pretty close. I will be definitely mention that. Yeah, so a week prior is really a best practice, just to be safe.
That's what certainly we've been telling them, that you've got to mail it 7 days ahead.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good idea.
Is there a way to confirm that a vote has been counted?
We do have on the iVote voter portal, part of the tracking function will indicate that your ballot was accepted after the ballot was returned, and that'll be noted on there. There's a graphic, kind of a graphic on there in iVote, and it's kind of in the center of the screen if you log in, and that's part of that ballot tracking that shows your application was received, a ballot was sent, and then a ballot was returned and accepted. Yes, and you can always contact the office. Someone can always contact the office, county office as well to check, but the iVote is definitely a self-service tool.
So iVote has all that information on it. It's not going to iVote simply to vote. It has a lot of
right. And iVote is definitely a great tool in general as the voter portal because it includes your registration information, certainly, but it includes information such as your polling place location. It also has information about your elected officials, as I mentioned, your voting history, a sample ballot. If you wish to view your sample ballot, what's on your ballot, you can certainly request an absentee or vote by mail, check the status. There's a whole host of things on iVote. Definitely encourage folks to check that out. iVote.de.gov.
That's iVote.de.gov,
G-O-V. Mm-hmm.
All right. I hope everybody got that.
Yes.
That sounds like there's a lot of information on it.
Absolutely.
How can we be sure that someone internally hasn't destroyed a ballot or it's lost? I mean, that's a lot of concern out there. They're being dumped. Everybody's suspicious
of
absolutely. Validity.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand. As I mentioned, with regards to everything being handled certainly by bipartisan teams and really in a nonpartisan manner, always under supervision. There's always a senior person, usually the director or deputy director or both of the county office. We also have video surveillance in our offices as well to ensure, and that's in all the areas, certainly including all the areas that handle absentee or vote by mail ballots. And there are multiple checks that occur in the process everywhere, everything from the ballots being clocked in at the beginnings. We have we have date stamping of when items are received, where they are held, and again, multiple levels of security and surveillance. And we also, probably most importantly of all of these processes, or related to all these processes, is that the preparation process for the ballots is a public process by our law, Delaware law. We have it posted, the county offices have it posted on the public meetings calendar. It's also posted at the offices. We encourage folks to come to the office. Anyone's welcome to come. They can observe the process, can see it. It's completely open and transparent. There is absolutely anyone is welcome, and they can certainly see and learn about the process. So we certainly encourage that.
So if anybody has any concerns at all, they can come in and watch it.
Absolutely. We'd be happy to answer any questions that may come up, certainly, as well, along the way, certainly.
Well, let's go to the U.S. mail.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, no stamp required.
Right, that's correct.
But it goes by bulk rate at that point?
No, all of our ballots are handled first-class mail. A voter will notice on the ballot envelope, they'll notice that it's metered, the kind of those red meter marks on the top right, but it's all considered first class. Some states do use a bulk mail or bulk rate. We do not. It's all first class mail service in Delaware, so the highest level of service. I also wanted to mention and kind of reassure folks that we work here, I particularly work with our postal local postal as well as regional postal officials. There's a regional election mail specialist for every region of the country. And the gentleman we work with at USPS is really excellent. I've worked with him for a number of election cycles, and he's very dedicated. And we even make arrangements with the local post offices that service the county offices, as well as the large processing plant at Harris Corner in Newcastle. We work with them, in fact, just prior to the election and on election day, to ensure that all the ballots that are in-house in the postal facilities are actually delivered to us, to ensure that we get the maximum number of ballots that are in the custody of the Postal Service by the close of polls to us. So I have a lot of confidence locally in our postal service, certainly, and um, no reason. I personally have had no reason to doubt the service levels or the commitment here locally in the region. I only, of course, can speak of what we know here locally, but I wanted to assure folks of that folks are very dedicated and very committed to getting that election mail processed in a timely manner.
I know a lot of times, particularly in the outlying areas, Western Kent County in particular,
Mm-hmm.
you get a letter marked, it's stamped Philadelphia or New Jersey.
Right.
So I think this is why people need to understand that at least mail your ballots in 7 days in advance, because you don't know what route it's going to take.
That's right. I'm glad you raised that point. There are, in fact, and that's a very good point. There are, in fact, and I don't want to bore everybody with a ton of minutia, but I think it's important to understand how it works because you raised a really good point, Senator. Is that there are, in fact, 3 processing facilities in this region where Delaware mail can go. Your mail may be postmarked Wilmington, which is Newcastle, Harris Corner, and as you mentioned, Philadelphia, and also South Jersey. So you're right. You need to. That's part of that best practice of sending that a minimum week in advance, because again, like as I mentioned, they're doing their best, and I think the speed of processing is very good. But again, you may be going a little bit longer distance depending on the load and the workflow. So that's a great point.
Another concern is politics turn on a dime. You've mailed your ballot in 7 days ahead and you change your mind, then what happens?
Well, what if you do change your mind for some reason? Feel free to contact our office now, with the county office, appropriate county office. The one challenge that you may face is that, again, going back to that 30-day window where we prepare the ballots, which means the opening them and scanning them. Because of the large volume, we have to do that, and that's underway. If the ballot already has been opened and prepared for processing, then we would not be able to reverse that at that point, because of course it's already been opened and prepared for scanning. If by chance you did just mail it in, let's say, for example, and it was just received and wasn't processed, again, gets back to that earlier the better. If you change your mind, try to contact your county office as quickly as possible so they can try to intercept that. And they certainly will help you if at all possible. Absolutely.
And how many mail-in ballots have you received to date?
We are just in the process of beginning to get the ballots back for the general, since the first ones are just going out. I can give you some stats, though. I'll give you stats for the primary that we have final stats for that. We had just over 76,000 absentee and vote by mail ballots that were received and counted for that election. So just to give you some statistics, that's 43% of the total vote. In the presidential primary, it was just over 56,000 of the total, and that was about 45%. So it seems to be we're tracking close to half by absentee and vote by mail at this point. But we certainly have well over 100,000 applications. About 138 was the last number that have been requested for the general. So certainly, obviously, for the general, numbers are higher, since all voters are eligible, not just Democrats and Republicans, as in the case with the last 2 elections, the presidential primary and the state primary.
Do you see this increasing the participation by voters?
Well, we certainly saw an uptick in participation for the for the primary election compared to 2016. There was about a 32% participation rate in the 2020 primaries compared to about 20% in the low 20s for the 2016. So it definitely has seemed to promote greater participation, I would say.
Good, because the apathy of the voter is killing the election process. Mm-hmm. So if this in fact helps move voters to the polls or voting, I think that's a good thing.
Sure.
I'm not particularly a fan of the mail-in voting because of the possibility of nefarious behavior, but that possibility exists no matter what we do, isn't it?
Right. True.
Obviously, there's been issues before, or at least claimed of issues before. So I don't know that this is any more likely for fraud than anything else. Humans doing it, humans can mess with it. So I don't have any more questions, Anthony. I appreciate very much your taking the time and being very detailed. This answers a lot of questions that my constituents have had.
Sure.
And others. And I just thank you very much for taking the time. I greatly appreciate it, sir. And good luck. And I wish you a great vacation after election.
Thank you. And Senator, thanks always for your dedication to. I know you're always, very, very, very helpful, and any information I can provide to your constituents anytime.
Thank you. Take care, and God bless you, sir.
Good day. Thank you, sir. Take care.